In a dimly lit chamber, adorned with luxurious Persian carpets and intricate tapestries, I stood at attention, my heart pounding in my chest. Khadija Khanum Tajrishi, now known as Forough al-Sultana, paced back and forth like a lioness ready to strike. As the Shah's favorite wife and one of the most powerful women in the Persian court, her eyes, dark and piercing, burned with a determination that sent shivers down my spine. Jaren, as she was now called, was known for her ruthless ambition and keen intellect, qualities that had earned her both fear and respect in equal measure. She turned abruptly, fixing her gaze upon me, and I felt the weight of her command before she even spoke.
दारोगा, तो बैद वफादारी बिचोन व चिरा, बिही ताज व तख्त व बिही मिंदाश्ता हुबाशी.
Her voice was like ice, each word cutting deeper than the last. The court's whispers of a magician, a remarkable architect, had reached her ears, and now it was my burden to bear.
नाम अरीक ist. Ein Erik, ein जादूगर उस चश्म बसियारी फरार करदा अस्त और मन उम्मीदवार उस चश्म में फरार कर इस्तेदाद और जवाहरी अस्त
Erik, the elusive artist, was to be brought to her.
मन तुरा फरमान में धूम की और आबियाबी बहसाए हाई के दरआन मख्फी शिद्दा अस्त बरवी वो और
Her words were filled with a chilling certainty. I knew there would be no mercy if I failed. The court's intrigue, the danger, and the thrill of this hunt had all coalesced into this single moment of dread. Well, Sultan.
Hala bro, daroga. Zamana's ahmiyat basayari brakhordar ist.
Failure, I knew, was not an option, sealing my fate. Her menacing tone left no room for doubt. Erik's rumored madness did not faze her. In fact, it seemed to intrigue her. She wanted his genius, no matter the cost. And I was the one tasked with delivering him to her. With a dismissive wave, her audience with me was now finished. Her mind already racing with plans for the wonders Erik would create, the weight of her command pressed heavily upon me. I knew I had no choice but to succeed. The Persian court awaited its newest jewel, and I was the one who had to deliver it. As a daroga or police inspector, it was my duty to hunt down those who threatened the stability of the court. This responsibility was passed down from my father, who had served the Shah with unwavering dedication. Manhunting was part of my job, a task I had performed countless times before. My father always told me, in this line of work, you either catch the quarry or become the hunted. His wisdom guided me through each mission, reminding me that failure was never an option. Serving the whims of the Sultana often felt less like enforcing law and more like performing civil services. Lately, I felt more like an Amir al-Aman, what you might call a sort of insurance man, insuring against disasters of her making. Truly a ghastly profession, really. Though I do find civil service no less appealing. The journey from Persia to Russia was long and arduous, fraught with dangers and challenges. We traversed rugged mountains, crossed vast deserts, and navigated through dense forests. Each step brought us closer to our destination, but the path was never easy. We began our journey on horseback, leaving the familiar landscapes of Persia behind. The air grew colder with each passing day, and the terrain became more unforgiving. Darius and I shared the burden of our supplies. Our conversations were often filled with a mix of apprehension and determination. Darius, ever the pragmatic one, spoke of the necessity of our mission, while I could not shake the sense of dread that clung to my thoughts. As we crossed the northern borders, the language barrier became an increasing obstacle. My knowledge of Russian was limited, but thankfully Darius was fluent. He handled all interactions with the locals, negotiating for food and shelter, and seeking directions to our final destination. I relied heavily on his linguistic skills, feeling a sense of isolation in a land where I could not understand the words spoken around me. When we reached a larger town with a railway station, we took advantage of the nascent rail system to ease part of our journey. The train ride provided a brief respite from the cold and allowed us to cover greater distances more quickly. The rhythmic clatter of the train wheels was both soothing and disconcerting as we pressed forward through the Russian landscape. One evening we camped in a small village. The villagers were kind but wary, and Darius spent hours conversing with them, gathering information about the fair where Erik was said to perform. I watched the flickering firelight dance across their faces, my mind occupied with thoughts of the dark magician we were seeking. The villagers spoke in hushed tones, their expressions a mixture of fear and curiosity. It was clear that Erik's reputation had spread far and wide.
Erik maskayi jadogar una bihim guftanu ya mardu bakhtur. Erik, the masked magician, they say, is a man of many talents. Na faqat jadugar balki ya musiki dan, muhandis wa sazandai ka khai khayal hai. He is not just a magician but also a musician, an engineer, and a builder of palaces of illusion. Megan ke mordehra zindah kono, aras kon were automatanra, mithl mawjudat zindah control kono. They say he can make the dead walk, control puppets and automata as if they were living beings. Badiha bahish Megan jadugar. Some call him a necromancer. Aun be sarzmine, दूर सफर कर दे हतीजापन उराज़ाई ज़्यादिर याद गिरफ्तों की हिच किस नितवानो फहमा. He has traveled to distant lands, even as far as Japan, learning secrets and acquiring knowledge that few can comprehend.
The closer we got to our destination, the more treacherous the journey became. The weather turned harsh, with icy winds cutting through our clothing and snow beginning to fall. Our horses struggled through the drifts, and we were forced to take refuge in a small cabin for a few days to wait out a particularly fierce storm. During this time, Darius continued to practice his Russian, ensuring that we would be prepared for any situation once we arrived. Finally, after weeks of travel, we reached the outskirts of the bustling fairgrounds in Nizhny Novgorod. The air was filled with the sounds of laughter and music, a stark contrast to the somber purpose of our mission. We dismounted and made our way through the throngs of people, following the directions we had been given. The Nizhny Novgorod fair was a sprawling wonderland of sights and sounds, a place where merchants and entertainers from all over the world gathered to showcase their goods and talents. The air was thick with the scent of exotic spices, the chatter of various languages, and the vibrant colors of countless stalls and tents. Among the myriad of attractions, one name stood out: Erik, the masked magician, whose performances were whispered about with a mix of awe and fear. As I navigated through the crowded fairgrounds accompanied by Darius, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The further we ventured, the darker and more obscure the surroundings became. It was as if we were being drawn into another world, where shadows danced and secrets whispered in the wind. Darius found a Russian merchant and made inquiries.
Здравствуйте, уважаемый. Как у вас дела сегодня?
Добрый день. Все хорошо, спасибо. Чем могу помочь?
Мы ищем известного музыканта и мага по имени Эрик. Вы не знаете, где его можно найти?
Ах, Эрик. Да, конечно. Его шоу проходит в большом черном шатре, недалеко от центральной площади ярмарки. You're looking for the masked magician, Erik? Yes. Follow the path to the large black tent adorned with strange symbols. You can't miss it.
Большое спасибо за вашу помощь. Thank you very much for your help.
Не за что. Удачи вам.
Let's not waste any more time. Lead the way, Darius. As we made our way through the fairgrounds, my eyes were drawn to a poster unlike any I had ever seen. It was a dark and haunting depiction, a glimpse into the world of Erik's performances. The artwork was intricate, almost gothic, with a blend of classical and eerie elements. The title, Erik et le spectacle des ombres sombres, was written in bold, elegant script, framed by ornate designs that seemed to pull you into another realm. The poster featured a masked figure, undoubtedly Erik, standing in the center with an aura of mystery and power. Around him, shadows of knights, ballerinas, and skeletal figures danced in a mesmerizing, almost hypnotic pattern. The background was painted with dark, swirling mists and hints of supernatural light, creating an atmosphere both beautiful and terrifying. At the bottom of the poster, in smaller print, were the words, "At the Fair of Nizhny Novgorod," accompanied by an official logo. It was clear that this was no ordinary performance. The poster promised a spectacle of dark enchantment and spine-chilling wonders, a show that dared its audience to venture into the depths of the unknown. As I stood there staring at the poster, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was the man I had come to find, the magician whose talents and dark allure had captivated so many. Erik was no ordinary performer. He was a master of shadows, a conjurer of nightmares, and I knew that my task had just become infinitely more complicated. We followed the vendor's directions, our steps leading us to a large, foreboding tent. The entrance was draped with dark fabric, and the designs of tarot cards and other mystical symbols adorned its surface. It was an imposing sight, promising both wonder and dread. We entered the tent, and the atmosphere inside was even more chilling. The walls were draped in heavy, dark fabric, and the air was thick with the scent of incense and something metallic, like blood. The stage was set with an elaborate backdrop of ancient ruins, mist swirling around the base, and flickering candlelight, casting long dancing shadows. As we took our seats, the crowd erupted into a unified chant, "Erik, Their voices reverberated through the tent. The show began with a howling. The lights dimmed, and a haunting melody began to play. From the shadows emerged a tall, gaunt figure. For the first time, we laid eyes on the man whose reputation had preceded him, and the reality was even more unsettling than the rumors.
Ce soir vous serez témoin de peurs inexprimées dans les ombres profondes des histoires oubliées. Behold the night in armor bright, moving with grace in the dimming light, forged from shadows, lifelike and grand, a marvel of magic by my own hand. Смотрите на кукол, снится mi takimi tokimi, рассказ, который они расскажут, мрачный и старинный, страницы где мечты умирают, марионетка желает знать чего. Однажды в сонной земле
Suddenly a resounding shriek filled the air. The dead began to rise from their graves, brought to life by Erik's magic. The stage was filled with skeletal figures and ghostly apparitions moving with an unnatural grace and fluidity. skeletal figures and ghostly apparitions moved with the haunting melody from Erik's violin, shifted to a more melancholic tune. From the shadows, a particularly macabre figure emerged, Lenore, a skeletal, bright puppet, dressed in a rotting wedding gown. Her decayed attire fluttered eerily as she seemed to glide across the stage.
Isn't she beautiful, Lenore the bride? N'est-elle pas magnifique, Lenore la mariée? Разве она не прекрасна, Lenora невеста? Forever destined to dance in the shadows, destinée à danser dans l'ombre pour l'éternité, навсегда обреченная танцевать в тенях. Once promised love, now forsaken, she dances not for joy, but for the sorrow that binds her spirit. Promis à l'amour, maintenant abandonné, elle danse non par choix, mais par la tristesse qui lie son esprit. Однажды обещанная любовь, теперь оставленная, она танцует не от радости, а от печали, связывающей ее дух. Her graceful steps tell the tale of a heart betrayed, of a love that could not endure the cruelty of fate. Regardez comme c'est pas gracieux, raconte l'estoum, raconte l'histoire d'un cœur trahi, d'un amour qui n'a pas pu supporter la cruauté du destin. Смотрите, как ее грациозные шаги рассказывают о разбитом сердце, о любви, не выдержавшей жестокости судьбы.
Erik began to waltz, his movements fluid and hauntingly synchronized with the music. Lenore, guided by invisible strings, and Erik's commanding presence, mirrored his steps perfectly.
Pourquoi es-tu si pâle? Pourquoi tes yeux bloquent encore? Les ombres dansent autour de toi, et la nuit murmure des secrets. Что с тобой, мой милый друг? Говори, я соглашу. Тени вокруг нас кружат, и ночь шепчет свои тайны. The dead are dancing, the shadows thin and warm, through the moonlit halls advancing, its spectral gleam gone. Au sein de valses des ombres, nos âmes se rencontrent, une danse éternelle sous la lumière de la lune. Мне моя радость, я с тобой, и это счастье, хоть и страшен ночи зной, мы танцуем в мире мертвых. And in the silent midnight, we'll dance through halls of gloom. Our steps a haunting echo in the quiet of the tomb. Avec moi, dans ce rêve de l'ombre, une danse pour l'éternité, nos cueillis dans la nuit, ta divise caminhando em silêncio, cheios de noite, cheios de tu, we najdem nasz hutnik, der nicht in Ja z tobą je szczęście, choć jest razem nocy znoj, my tancujemy w milion. And in the silent midnight, we'll dance through halls of gloom. Our steps are haunting echo in the quiet of the tomb. Le long, yes, avec moi, dans ce royaume de l'ombre, les danses pour l'éternité, nos cœurs liés dans la nuit. Toi qui disais comme les recettes, chez moi, chez tout, mais ailleurs, je peux dire, t'es ici, moi je vois.
As the waltz reached its end, Lenore floated closer to Erik. With a delicate skeletal hand, she reached up and gently removed his mask, revealing his face to the audience. Erik's expression remained stoic, his eyes filled with a depth of emotion. At that moment, Lenore seemed to crumble, her form collapsing into itself. She fell through a trapdoor with a ghostly sigh, vanishing from sight and leaving only her tattered wedding dress fluttering to the ground. The audience gasped in horror as Erik's true face was revealed. He looked like a living corpse, his skin pale and stretched tight over his bones. For a moment, there was a stunned silence, and I found myself wondering if dying by the Sultana's hand would be so terrible. Erik seemed like a jinn, a creature of dark magic and unearthly power. Of course, the Sultana, the bitch queen of Babylon, would send me a good pious man to make a deal with a living demon of hell. Only she could conceive such depravity. And yet, I knew nothing of how deep her depravity ran. None of us did. Not yet. He then gazed at us, a sinister smile playing on his lips. The irony is palpable, I thought. The one who commands the dead is the one who lives, and yet there is a part of him that is more dead than alive. Erik's presence was a haunting reminder of the thin veil between life and death. The master of shadows, who seemed to straddle both worlds with ease, and, it must be said, a distinctive style. The puppets Skeletal figures surrounded Erik. Their presence almost protective. Slowly they helped him stand tall. Erik began to walk forward, his face now fully exposed, daring the audience to look him in the eye. His steps were measured and defiant, his gaze piercing. As Erik's blazing eyes scanned the crowd, I felt a chill run down my spine. I couldn't help but think of the stories my father told me as a child. Tales of dark spirits and malevolent forces that preyed on the living. And here I was, face to face with such a being, tasked with convincing him to aid the Sultan.
Смотрите на это разбитое лицо, вы нежные и смелые. Взгляните на эту руину человека, по жизни жестоко насмехающегося. В глубоких тенях я ходил один, где свет не смеет ступать. Мое сердце, когда-то теплое, теперь превратилось в камень среди безмолвных мертвецов. Взгляните на меня здесь, как на живого мертвеца, среди этого призрачного бала, где призрачные эхо преследуют ночь, и тьма покрывает все. Это царство, это ночь, это пустая сцена, сердце всего, что я знал. В этой опере ночи я правлю.
Witness now this shattered visage, ye tender and ye bold. Gaze upon this ruin of man, by life's cruel jest so cold. In shadows deep I've walked alone, where light dares not to tread. My heart, once warm, now turned to stone, amongst the silent dead. Behold me here, as l'amour vivant amidst this spectral ball, where ghostly echoes haunt the night, and darkness covers all. This realm, this night, this hollow scene, is the heart of all I've known. In this opera of the night, I reign.
As he moved upstage, the dead chorus began to sing again, their voices rising in a morbid and enchanting harmony. The skeletal figures and ghostly apparitions began to dance once more, their movements synchronized with the haunting melody. They moved across the front of the stage, their eerie grace contrasting with Erik's resolute presence upstage. The music swelled and the dead chorus filled the air with their morbid song. The audience, captivated by the haunting beauty and emotional depth of the performance, watched in rapt silence. Erik, now unmasked and defiant, stood as the centerpiece of this spectral dance, his presence both intense and striking.
Je danse pour l'amour perdu, pour les rêves qui ne sont plus. Chaque pirouette, un soupir dans ce théâtre de l'obscurité. Je
As the dancers slowly began to return to their graves, Erik put his mask back on. The show was nearing its end, and Erik's angelic voice filled the tent, making the audience forget the horror of his face.
Beauté et tristesse entrelacées, dans cette danse nous laisse liés. Une marine dans un flou gracieux, une grâce éphémère dans la lueur des ombres. In the realm of magic where shadows land, our journey together comes to an end. But remember this night, the wonders you've seen in the heart of the fair, where nightmares can be. Et ici dans le cœur grandiose de la foi, la magie d'Erik a joué son rôle, un conte de merveilles sombre et lumineux dans les ombres de la nuit. In love, magic, the shadows land, our journey together comes to an end. Remember this night, the wonders we see in the heart of the fair, where nightmares can be. And it's in our cœur grandiose de la foi, la magie d'Erik a joué son rôle, un conte de merveilles sombre et lumineux dans les ombres de la nuit.
He sang the final lines, his voice resonating through the tent like a disembodied spirit.
Et ici dans le cœur grandiose de la foi, la magie d'Erik a joué son rôle, un conte de merveilles sombre et lumineux dans les ombres de la nuit. Our journey together comes to an end. Remember this night, the wonders you see in the heart of the fair, where nightmare can be.
As Erik vanished like mist, another casket opened, and a skeleton appeared holding a top hat. The skeleton turned it towards the audience, inviting them to place their gold inside the hat. The figure remained motionless, but its eyes, or rather the dark voids, where its eyes should have been, stared into the souls of the audience members. No one dared to leave without paying. As the last child stepped away from the casket, the skeleton pulled the hat back towards its chest, its bony fingers clutching the brim with a deliberate grace. It looked down into the hat as if counting the gold, the eerie silence amplifying the tension in the tent. Then with a slow, almost mechanical motion, it raised its head and turned its hollow gaze toward me, creating an unsettling chill in the air. Suddenly, the skeleton collapsed back into the coffin, the bones clattering as they fell. The lid slammed shut with a resounding bang, and in the silence that followed, Darius, although I was never certain, swore he heard the distinct sound of a bolt sliding inside the casket, locking it tight. I glanced at Darius, who seemed equally entranced and unnerved by what he had seen. He, too, understood the gravity of our mission. We would have to find a way to bring this dark magician, this necromancer, to Persia.
Dear guests, as the shadows deepen and our tale nears its end,
we invite you to return to Zariya Hollow. Join us for the 5th and final chapter of Gaston Leroux's The Ghost in the Opera House, where all will be revealed. Chapter 5, coming soon.